Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply. In this video is to bring you a closer look at the Bommer number F7000 31A 640. This is the top pivot only for their 7112 series double acting spring pivots. And you know, why would you order the top pivots separately? Well, I have certainly sold this to people who, you know, just need a replacement. Damaged, otherwise somehow lost, vandalized, broken, whatever the case might be. But I've also sold this top pivot when we have done things, you know, not exactly in the playbook, so to speak. Having a top pivot that you can use with something on the bottom sometimes is very helpful, and this comes into play in that regard. And what I mean is we did a project one time. We had well, let's see if I can dig up some data. Did a project about 6 months ago in September of 2019. And an established client of mine called and said, yeah, I'm having a problem with some Bommer 3029 8-inch hinges. And immediately I'm thinking, that's a massive hinge. That's an epically large hinge capable of lots of weight. He says, yeah, we built this Dutch door. And okay, I'm thinking a Dutch door about 40-inch tall. And we put 3 of them on this Dutch door, and the hinges can't hold the door. And I'm thinking, that's impossible. What did you make the door out of? Is what I'm thinking. Well, the first question is, how heavy is the door? And the guy says, well, about 150 pounds. I'm scratching my head saying, well, that's within, I don't remember if it was 150, but in that range. But I say to myself, well, that's clearly within the range of what's permissible for that hinge. Well, we continue to, and he's asking, you know, if they can use a Bommer pivot as a possible fix. And I'm saying to myself, well, before we get to changing the hardware, let's figure out what's causing the initial problem. And let's switch to the screen view where we can take a look at exactly what the problem was. And this is the item that we're looking at here, this top pivot. And what the problem was, here's the client's Dutch door. Here are his 3 hinges. You know, we're looking at 1 3/4 inch thickness. Okay, some applied molding, not a big deal. We've got a shelf up here, okay, and I'm still scratching my head. It looks like, for all intents and purposes, this is typical carpentry. This is a door that's been cut. They've put a cutout in it. They trimmed it out with raised molding. Okay, nothing special here. Particle board. Well, turns out that all of this action up here is granite. Okay? So when the client said to me, yeah, that Dutch door shelf is made of granite. Well, how much do you think that is of the 150 pounds? He's like, well, you know, probably 100 pounds of it. So when we realized what the true problem was, those epic 8-inch tall hinges with all that weight being right here, it took that door and really made it come out. Okay? So enter the next concept. Well, the client wanted to do a Bommer pivot, but what he really wanted to do was, you know, swap out the hinges for something else. And the problem that we have here is, you know, the 7112, it's not rated for the weight. The client, then the client said, well, what about some of these clamp hinges, double acting clamp hinges? Well, no, I mean, the door is still going to leave the opening, the clamp hinges, because it'll separate over here. Then I finally, you know, basically said to the client, well, what we could do is we could toss a 7813 at it, pardon me, a 7813 HD. It'll handle your 150 pounds. We'll use the bottom portion only. Okay, bottom portion only. And then let's toss the top pivot at it. Now, the problem with that was, now, there wasn't a problem with it, but what we had to contend with is the fact that our vertical axis of pivoting was not in the same location for both pieces of hardware. So on that 7813 HD, edge of the jam to the vertical axis of pivoting is 1.75 inches. Okay, 1.75 inches. Well, the 7112 series, or the 7012, that gives us 1.5 inches from the jam to the vertical axis of pivoting. Okay, so we're only going to get 1.5 inches out of this. So what do? Okay, well, you do something. You know, they may modify the door up here to squeeze that extra little 1/8 of an inch out of it. Forgive me, that's not going to work at all. I think what we did was we padded 1/8 of an inch underneath the bracket. That's surely what we had to do. Or what they may have done also was mortise the hardware and cheat it 1/8 of an inch towards the hinge style. That would have been likely the more elegant of the two solutions, as seen up here. And the client was not explicit on how the carpenter mitigated the problem, but I was reported back to that the problem was utterly and thoroughly handled and problem solved permanently, and very grateful for the creative suggestion. So I don't know that this F7000 is being used in such a application where you're Frankensteining two different pieces of hardware, but why not? Why not is the question. So you're going to have 1.75 inches on the bottom, 1.5 inches on the top. Probably cheat it over here would be what I would have done. Now the problem with that is, well, there's no problem with it. It's just, it is what it is. You have a little unusual gap at the top, but who's going to notice 1/8 of an inch is what I'm ultimately driving at. Okay, so that's how we used a top pivot only to creatively solve the problem. Now, since we're on the page, since we're on the camera view, this top pivot assembly is available in 600 for prime coat, 601 for bright black japanned, 603 for zinc, 632 polished brass, 633 satin brass, 639 satin bronze, 640 oil rub bronze, 643 satin bronze blackened like an antique bronze, 646 satin nickel, 651 is satin chrome. Bommer is very proud of their plating capability. They have a standalone separate plant that does nothing but plating. They are very proud to say that they can plate over 30 finishes. I don't remember if it's 32 or 34. And an interesting fun fact about Bommer's plating plant, where the plant is in South Carolina, they eject the waste that they eject into the public water system is cleaner than the municipality's water that they deliver to homes. The municipality's water is clean that is delivered to homes. Obviously, what Bommer is, their byproduct is cleaner than what the government provides, which the tap water is clean. What Bommer is putting back into the system is ultra clean, a fact that they are exceptionally proud of. I know that I am, to represent them. So we've got some documents here. Template. This is going to apply to the entire unit that we're dealing with, and they'll have a couple of basic dimensional properties of the top pivot itself. We can also look at the instructions again for the entire assembly. I won't go into all of this because we're dealing only with the top pivot. We have also the product catalog, and that's nice because you can review all of this material. That top pivot, it's going to come with the 7112, 7012, etc., etc. Now, let's switch back to the camera view so we can take some basic dimensional properties and then wrap up this video. Okay, so this top pivot is going to include, of course, the business end itself. This is threaded. This will come out. When you're installing this kind of material, your door will go into the opening with your top plate attached to the top of the door. This spindle, the top pin will be removed. After you get it in place, you'll then insert your top pin back down into the top of the door, and then you're as right as rain. And you can see how you'd have some room to cheat that dimension over ever so slightly. You're also going to get a screw pack. There will be, of course, all wood screws. The 2 zinc-coated screws that are in there are for the, I think this part number is 7890. This can be purchased separately alone as well, although this is only part of the 7890. When you buy the 7800 series double-acting floor springs, it'll come with a complete 7890. This is just the door portion of the 7890. Now, some basic dimensional properties. Overall width, about 1.25 inches. Yeah, about 1.25 inches. Overall height, about 2.25 inches. Overall projection looks like it's about 2 9/16. Our door portion of the 7890, that's overall about 2 1/8. It should be about 7/8 diameter. Yeah, 7/8 diameter. Okay. So again, why you would purchase this? You might need a replacement, or you might be getting creative like we did for that client. The name Bommer is synonymous with domestically manufactured, exclusively domestically manufactured. Even the steel is domestically manufactured. Hinges, primarily hinges. If you know the name Bommer, you probably do for spring hinges, especially double-acting spring hinges. It was indeed the brothers Bommer in 1876 or so that invented the spring hinge. And that company is owned by the husband of the granddaughter of the founders. He's not a Bommer. His wife is a granddaughter of the 2 brothers. And I was quite fortunate, lucky enough to take a plant tour, and I found it absolutely exhilarating, invigorating, in fact. I have a very new appreciation for what it takes to manufacture hinges, that's for sure. A lot goes into it. I'm partial to Bommer, and it's not only because I'm a distributor of theirs, but because I believe in their company, their corporate belief of domestic manufacturing. I believe in the quality of the product. The management there would certainly, I think management of most companies would feel this, but I believe it with Bommer. They will take their customer service department. They'll take their R&D department, who, there's a gentleman, there's more than one, but the lead gentleman in engineering there, he's just, he is a mind swell of knowledge when it comes to hinges. He's a capstone in the development of hinges. His knowledge is unassailable and complete and thorough. Their packaging department, their plating department, their all of it. They will compete with any manufacturer in those areas. And I wish Bommer a very long, continued, happy success. If you have any questions on the F7000 31A and a 640, a top pivot for the 7012, 7112 series double-acting pivots, or any other Bommer product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you.